One very important truth that initially is very difficult to swallow is this, is that we are born into a sinful condition or state of being. We are born into a sinful condition or state of being. And Van, I'd like you to read two passages. First Psalm 51:5 and then Psalm 58:3.
Indeed, I was guilty when I was born. I was sinful when my mother conceived me. The wicked go astray from the womb. Liars wander about from birth.
So Van, one of the things that I say in the book is that when children are born, we celebrate life, and we don't say negative things about children when they're born. We celebrate. But every human child, every human being apart from Jesus Christ, was born with a sin nature. And that again means that there's a sinful tendency, there's a sinful disposition, there is this inherent corruption and this guilt that is, to use your wording from the previous video, is almost hardwired and soft-wired into who we are. We just bend away from God. We have this tendency to rebel. And Van, you might have heard that theologians sometimes will talk about total depravity, and that just means that sin affects every part of who we are. It affects our values, our desires, our thoughts, our commitments, our emotions, our behaviors, our speech. It affects every part of who we are. It doesn't mean we're as sinful as we could be, but it means no part of us is left unaffected. So Van, as you consider the reality that we're born into a sinful condition, that we have a sinful state of being, how do you react to that knowledge that you yourself have a sinful state of being? And then as a follow-up question, why do you think so many people resist that truth?
Well, I don't know if this is the most polite thing to say, but the first thing that comes to mind is the truth hurts. And I say that to myself. I mean, I accept the fact that I'm born with a sinful nature. But I've heard many people say things to me like, Van, if I die and go to hell, then I know there's not a God because I'm a good person. And then even counselors and secular psychologists that I've spoken to, they believe and teach that everybody is born inherently good, and then it's throughout life's circumstances and situations that people make bad choices and become bad. And so when I read God's Word, it tells me that I have a moral sickness that I have to accept.
Yeah, Van, I agree. This is the bad news, wouldn't you say? I mean, we talk about the good news that Jesus died and rose from the dead, but this is the bad news. And the bad news isn't just that you have sinful thoughts and sinful words and sinful behaviors. It's deeper than that. We have a sinful nature, a sinful condition. And I think it was John Piper in one of his books that helped me understand this, is, do you want to know if you have a terrible disease? Do you want to hear that news? And the answer is yes and no. On the one hand, I don't want to hear it at all, but if there's a cure, I absolutely want to hear it. So that's why I think you're seeing, you're hearing that the two of us are reacting with mixed feelings, because this is hard. It's hard to know that we have this comprehensive disposition away from God, but it paves the way for us to embrace God the Father's solution in His Son, Jesus Christ. So I'm actually glad that God is so direct and clear with us that I have a guilt problem, I have a corruption problem that only His Son, Jesus Christ, can solve.